What do you think would happen if the Air Force and the Army decide to run a hospital together? Well, the commander of the entire hospital and unit will quit his job on the last day. What's going on, everybody? T-SPLY here, and today we're going to be talking about a pretty interesting news story. This story sort of unveils the curtains and looks into how the Army and the Air Force can bat heads even in a job where they're supposed to work together to save lives. Now, we're going to be looking at a news article on Army Times about Colonel Ken Bode. He was the commander of the 595th Medical Operations Squadron, and he was in charge of Brooke Army Medical Center in Texas. Now, according to Colonel Bode, he's been raising concerns and issues about the command structure among the unit. And of course, nobody was listening to him, so in his eyes, he thought, you know what, I'm gonna lay down the law. He dropped a 3-page paper citing what the issues were, and he quit on his last day of the job. Now, I say quit in parentheses because if he actually quit, there would be a lot of issues. I think it was more of a symbolic, hey, I'm quitting this position, and here's why. And because of that, he was right. He instigated an investigation among the Air Force and the Army in a joint unit investigation. Now, you always hear about the joke about the Air Force sleeping in hotels and having the best jobs ever, and in the Army, you're sleeping in a foxhole, you're eating crappy food, but when you really break down that joke, what it really means is the two cultures are very different. And even back in 2005, when this hospital officially opened, there were already conflicting cultural issues among the Air Force and the Army. Issue number one, and I'm actually surprised that the Air Force and Army didn't figure this out, Army personnel in the medical field have to follow state laws and have special license to maybe administer drugs. But in the Air Force, they follow a federal law. So anywhere you work in the Air Force and you're working in a medical facility, you're all good to go to administer those drugs. Whether in Alaska or in Texas, you're good to go. So because of this, we're starting to see limitations between what soldiers and airmen can do. If an airman is not around and a soldier doesn't have the license for a particular job, what's supposed to happen? Then you have actual cultural issues where, as a soldier, it doesn't matter what your job is, you have a lot of respect for every single rank. So you don't just go as a private straight to your commander. Whereas in the Air Force, it's more understood that if we're all working together, it makes a little more sense that maybe a private can go directly to the commander and you guys can get the job done together. And this is what was happening in the hospital where airmen were not following Army culture and the Army was not following Air Force culture, and then we have more butting heads. Now, what's also interesting about this news story is that Colonel Bode publicly stated that he went above and beyond and tried reaching out to his above command team and said, hey, we got issues here, and nobody was listening to him. Typically, whenever you hear of news stories like this, it comes out on social media because you had a whistleblower who was like a private, and then a video comes out on TikTok, but this is totally different. It's crazy to think that we almost never hear about the Air Force having too much negative publicity. Colonel Bode even said a lot of this has been swept under the rug to protect the integrity of the unit and the commanders above him. Now that the Air Force has some negative press, it's not surprising to see that they only have it mainly because maybe they're tied to the Army. So this is a developing story and we'll see what happens.